Okay, so today we're going to tackle this DORA thing, the EU's Digital Operational Resilience Act.
Ah, yes, DORA.
You sent me like a ton of stuff.
It's a beast.
Yeah, excerpts from the actual regulation itself, expert analysis.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like we really need to like get a grip on this.
Absolutely.
What it means for financial institutions.
Right.
And the tech companies they rely on. So,
what's interesting here is that DORA, it's not just about like checking boxes and, making sure you're compliant. This is about a potential like sea change.
Okay.
And how the financial sector thinks about cybersecurity and risk management in this digital age.
Okay, so paint me a picture here. Like what exactly is covered under DORA?
So think of it this way.
Okay.
DORA casts a very wide net.
Cool.
It covers a lot.
Yeah.
We're talking banks, investment firms, insurance companies, even cryptocurrency providers.
Wow. Okay.
And it doesn't even stop there. It goes beyond those institutions to critical ICT third-party service providers. So that includes your cloud platforms, your software developers, your data analytics firms.
Gotcha.
They all fall under DORA's watchful eye.
So it's not just about like stopping the hackers?
No. This is about like everything.
Okay.
DORA takes what we call an all hazards approach.
Okay.
You're talking sabotage, natural disasters, power outages, even just human error.
Oh, wow.
Anything that could disrupt those digital operations is fair game.
Okay, so it's really about building a system that can take a punch.
Exactly.
Roll with it. Okay, so where do we even begin to unpack something this massive?
So I think to really wrap your head around it,
you
got to think about those core pillars.
Okay.
At its heart, DORA is about a few key things. Strong ICT risk management,
Okay.
rigorous incident reporting, proactive testing, and then a robust oversight framework, especially when we're talking about those critical ICT third-party providers.
Okay, let's break those down one by one.
Okay.
Let's start with ICT risk management. What's the big picture here? What does DORA actually want these financial entities to do?
So essentially, it mandates that all these financial players establish really solid ICT risk management frameworks.
Okay.
We're not talking about like a quick checklist or anything.
Yeah.
This is like a systemic approach.
Gotcha.
Imagine you're a bank, right? You need to figure out how to identify, assess, and mitigate every possible digital disruption that could come your way.
Oh, wow.
They need procedures for everything.
Yeah.
From how do we identify these risks in the first place?
Right.
How do we protect against them? How do we prevent them? That all the way to like, okay, how do we detect them?
Right.
How do we respond effectively if something happens? How do we recover quickly and communicate clearly?
Right.
And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
It's all about continuous learning and improvement.
Okay, so this isn't just business as usual.
No.
This isn't just throwing on some antivirus software and calling it a day.
Nope. Much more comprehensive.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So that's ICT risk management. But there was something else you said that really stood out to me, and that was incident reporting.
Yes.
DORA has some really specific requirements when it comes to reporting major ICT incidents to the authorities. I mean, they already report things like cyber attacks, right?
Oh, they do. But
what's different here?
Remember, DORA is not just about cybersecurity. It's about operational resilience across the board.
Gotcha.
So even if, let's say, a system goes down because of a power outage, that needs to be reported too.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter if it was malicious or not.
Ah, I see. So it's really about transparency and accountability for any major disruption.
Exactly.
Okay, so they've got their risk management frameworks in place.
Yeah.
They're diligently reporting incidents. What's next? What's the next step in DORA's playbook?
Testing. Testing.
Oh, okay.
DORA really emphasizes regular digital operational resilience testing.
Okay.
And this means using a range of tests, like threat-led penetration testing, which is also called TLPT. Basically, think of it like hiring ethical hackers to try to break into your systems and find vulnerabilities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining, like, the intensity of those tests probably depends on the type of financial institution we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, a small credit union versus a global investment bank.
You got it. The testing requirements are really tailored to the specific financial entity.
Okay.
Based on their size, their criticality, and all of that.
Gotcha.
So obviously a global bank that's considered systemically important, they're going to face a much higher bar than like a small regional lender.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now we can't forget about those ICT third-party providers, right?
Right. Super important.
All those companies that provide the cloud services, the software,
Yes.
all that behind-the-scenes stuff that these financial institutions depend on.
DORA actually has a whole section devoted to managing the risks associated with relying on those third parties. And it makes sense when you think about it. I mean, financial institutions today are so heavily dependent on cloud providers, software vendors, data analytics firms.
Right.
The list goes on and on.
And if something goes wrong with one of those providers, it could cascade through the entire financial system, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why DORA imposes these really specific contractual obligations and oversight mechanisms
Oh, okay.
on these critical ICT third-party service providers.
Okay.
We're talking about things like detailed service level agreements,
Yeah.
very strict incident reporting requirements, and even the possibility of audits, not just by the financial institutions themselves,
Yeah.
but potentially by EU authorities in some cases.
Oh, wow. So they're really trying to tighten the reins on these third-party providers.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, one thing that I found particularly interesting going through all these documents was the concept of using standard contractual clauses.
Oh, yeah.
This idea that they're actually encouraging
It's a good idea.
the use of these pre-approved clauses for specific services. Yeah.
And it's like, that could be a game changer.
Potentially, yeah. Imagine instead of having to negotiate every single detail of a contract from scratch.
Right.
You could have these standardized terms that everyone's already agreed on.
Yeah.
It could make the whole contracting process so much more efficient.
Yeah, not to mention it could reduce the risk of legal disputes down the line.
Absolutely.
If everybody's already operating from the same playbook.
Yeah. So much smoother.
Okay, so we talked about that oversight. We should probably unpack the actual oversight framework.
Yes, let's do it.
What makes this framework so unique?
So this is specifically designed for those critical ICT third-party providers.
Okay.
The EU actually has a process for designating certain providers as critical based on a whole bunch of factors, like
Right.
how important is this provider to the financial sector?
Yeah.
How many financial institutions actually rely on their services? And what's the potential impact if their services were disrupted?
Right.
It's all about assessing those risks. Okay, so who decides who gets that critical designation?
So this is where the lead overseer comes in.
Okay.
DORA establishes this new EU body called the lead overseer.
Okay.
And they're basically the ones who are responsible for supervising these critical ICT third-party providers.
Gotcha.
They have quite a bit of power.
Yeah.
They can conduct audits,
Mm-hmm.
issue recommendations, and even impose penalties if a provider isn't meeting those DORA requirements.
So if, a big cloud provider is dropping the ball in security, the lead overseer can step in and say, hey, you need to step it up or there will be consequences.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting.
Okay.
This oversight, it even applies to providers that are located outside of the EU.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
So even if a company is based in, let's say, the U.S., but they provide services to EU financial institutions,
Yes.
they still have to answer to the EU.
That's right.
Wow, that's a pretty big deal.
It is.
It seems like DORA's influence extends way beyond the EU's borders.
Yeah. It's a way for the EU to ensure they have the oversight and the enforcement capabilities, regardless of where that provider is actually located.
Talk about setting a precedent. But even with this framework in place, coordinating oversight across so many different financial institutions, all these service providers, it's got to be pretty complex, right?
It is, and that's why DORA also establishes something called the Oversight Forum.
Okay.
Think of it as like a platform for collaboration.
Okay.
It brings together representatives from those ESAs, from national competent authorities in each member state, and even independent experts.
Oh, wow.
And the goal is really to make sure there's a consistent approach to ICT risk management across the board.
Gotcha. So it's all about promoting best practices, making sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, it's about consistency.
Okay, so we've covered the core principles of DORA, some of the key provisions, but how does it all get put into practice?
Right.
What about the actual implementation and enforcement? I mean, this is a beast of a regulation.
It is a big one.
So how does it actually work?
Well, DORA officially entered into force on January 17th, 2025.
Okay.
So all these institutions and providers, they're scrambling to figure out how to comply.
Right.
And each EU member state has its own competent authorities that are responsible for supervising financial entities and enforcing those provisions within their borders.
Right.
And they have a whole toolbox, on-site inspections, warnings, administrative penalties.
Okay.
They can even require companies to take specific remedial measures if they're not compliant.
So I imagine those penalties could be pretty hefty if a company really drops the ball.
They can be, yeah.
Yeah.
The regulation allows for penalties of up to 1% of the average daily worldwide turnover
Whoa.
of the financial entity or ICT provider in question.
So for a large company, we're talking potentially millions of euros in fines.
Potentially, yeah.
Yikes. Okay, that's a serious incentive to get your act together and comply.
It is.
But beyond the penalties, what's the overall significance here?
So I think what's really fascinating is that DORA is fundamentally reshaping the landscape
Okay.
of cybersecurity and risk management.
Okay.
It's setting a new standard for digital operational resilience in the financial sector.
Okay.
It's not just about making the system more secure.
Yeah.
It's about fostering a culture of proactivity, transparency, and accountability across the board.
And all of this is happening against this backdrop of rapid technological change.
Of course.
I mean, just think about how quickly cloud computing, artificial intelligence, blockchain, all these new technologies are emerging
Absolutely.
and changing the game.
It's a constantly evolving landscape.
Yeah.
And that's why I think DORA is so important.
Okay.
It's future-proofing the financial sector.
Gotcha.
It's establishing a framework that can actually adapt to these new technologies
Right.
and the new risks that they inevitably bring.
Okay.
DORA is pushing these institutions and providers to constantly evaluate their systems, the processes, even their organizational culture, just to make sure that they're prepared for whatever the future holds.
But as with any new regulation, the devil's in the details, right?
Always, always.
So how do we make sure that DORA actually lives up to its potential?
Well, the true success of DORA really hinges on how effectively it's implemented and enforced, right?
Right.
And of course, how well these institutions and providers can actually adapt to these new requirements.
So a lot is riding on this.
It's a big one.
But what does it all actually mean for the average person?
Yeah.
Why should they care about this?
Right, right. That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
A more resilient financial system benefits everyone.
Okay.
When these banks, payment systems, all these institutions are better protected against these disruptions, it means less downtime for you,
Right.
fewer service interruptions, and a lower risk of things like financial instability.
Gotcha.
It means your money is safer, your transactions are more reliable, and the overall economy is just less vulnerable to shocks.
So at the end of the day, DORA is about protecting consumers, ensuring the stability of the whole system.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that there was one detail in DORA that you thought we should pay particular attention to.
Yes, yes. This one's really interesting.
What was that again?
So the regulation actually explicitly calls for strengthened requirements for statutory auditors and audit firms
Okay.
regarding digital operational resilience.
Interesting.
And it even hints that they might be brought under DORA's umbrella at some point in the future.
Oh, wow.
Or at least that we might see amendments to existing auditing standards to incorporate these new requirements.
So auditors could have a much bigger role to play in all of this.
Potentially, yeah. Imagine auditors being tasked with actually verifying that institutions and providers are meeting those requirements.
Right.
Of evaluating how effective their risk management frameworks are. Even assessing how prepared they are for these emerging technologies.
Wow. That would be a pretty significant shift for the auditing profession.
It would be. It would be. It's definitely something to watch.
Okay, that's something to keep an eye on for sure.
It is. The implications are huge.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
But this is obviously a massive topic.
It's a big one.
So we'll be back to continue this deep dive into DORA.
Yes.
And we'll be exploring some of the more practical challenges and opportunities in part 2.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned for that.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
All right. Okay.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so we're back. And I'm guessing that all this talk about stricter regulations and oversight and penalties is probably making some people in the financial world a little bit nervous.
Yeah. I mean, it is a pretty big shift. Implementing something as complex as DORA, it's bound to come with its fair share of challenges, especially for institutions that are used to doing things a certain way.
So, what are the biggest challenges they're facing right now? Hit me with it.
So one of the most immediate challenges is just wrapping their heads around the sheer scope of DORA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dense.
Yeah.
It's technical.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
Huh.
A lot of institutions are still trying to just decipher what it actually means for them.
Right.
They're trying to figure out, okay, how do we map these requirements onto our existing ICP systems?
Mm.
What about our processes? What about our governance structures?
Yeah.
It's not an easy task.
No, it sounds like their legal and compliance teams are working overtime.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then you got the question of resources.
Right.
Implementing DORA effectively. It requires significant investment, right?
Right.
In technology and expertise, even just in training staff.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, like, smaller entities might struggle to keep up with these demands.
Yeah, trying to overhaul your entire approach to ICT risk management like that when you maybe don't have as many resources is tough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, there's the ticking clock. Even though DORA is officially enforced now,
Mm-hmm.
there's still a lot of uncertainty out there.
Right.
Those European Supervisory Authorities, ESAs, they're still working on those detailed technical standards.
Mm-hmm.
And each member state is still finalizing its own approach to supervision and enforcement.
Right.
So it's kind of a moving target for these institutions,
Yeah.
trying to figure out exactly what they need to do.
Right. So how do they plan? It's tough.
It's tough, yeah. And then you have the whole legacy ICT systems issue.
Oh, right. The elephant in the room.
Yeah. A lot of institutions are still relying on those older systems that weren't designed with DORA in mind.
Yeah, and upgrading or replacing those systems, that's not a simple thing.
No. Incredibly costly.
Yeah.
Incredibly complex.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might not even be feasible.
So what are they supposed to do? Are they just stuck?
Well, they need to take a really hard look at those legacy systems. Identify the specific risks,
Okay.
figure out some mitigation strategies, maybe isolating those systems,
Yeah.
implementing additional security controls,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even phasing them out gradually as they modernize.
Right. So it's not like a quick fix, it's a process.
As a process, yeah. And speaking of challenges, how are the ICT third-party providers handling all of this?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they're feeling the pressure too.
They are. They're facing a lot of the same challenges as the institutions.
Okay.
Trying to understand the regulation,
Mhm.
figuring out resources, navigating that uncertainty.
Right.
But they have a few unique concerns as well.
Like what?
Well, think about those critical ICT third-party providers that are designated by the EU.
Okay.
They're under a lot more scrutiny now.
Yeah.
They need to be ready for potential audits by the lead overseer, which can be quite intrusive,
Yeah. I imagine having EU regulators digging into your systems, that's got to be a little nerve-wracking.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have that requirement for some providers to set up shop in the EU.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's causing some headaches.
Yeah. It's a logistical and financial challenge, I bet.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
Especially for providers that might not see the EU as like a core market.
Right.
It adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah. So lots of challenges on both sides of the equation.
Yeah. It's a big adjustment.
But amidst all this doom and gloom, there's got to be some opportunities here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, DORA is ultimately about building a more resilient and secure system.
Okay.
And that's good for everyone.
Right. So it's not just about compliance.
No.
It's about actually making things better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for institutions, DORA can be a catalyst for real improvement.
Okay.
They're being pushed to rethink their approach to ICT risk management,
Mm-hmm.
enhance their cybersecurity posture,
Yeah.
really strengthen their overall resilience.
Okay.
And that can lead to some very tangible benefits. Less downtime, improved customer trust, maybe even a competitive advantage.
So you're saying it's possible to turn compliance into a strategic opportunity?
It is. What about those third-party providers? What's in it for them?
Yeah, good question.
Well, they also have a chance to turn this challenge into an opportunity.
Okay.
By showing that they're meeting these strict requirements,
Mm-hmm.
they can build a reputation for security and resilience,
Right.
which can attract new customers, solidify relationships with existing ones,
Okay.
maybe even allow them to charge a premium for their services.
So it's a chance to really stand out in the market.
Yeah, build a brand that's synonymous with trust and reliability.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then there's the whole innovation piece, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
DORA is pushing the sector to think differently about ICT risk management, and that's creating a demand for new technologies and tools, new services.
Okay.
Companies are scrambling to develop innovative solutions to help clients navigate the complexities of DORA.
So in a way, DORA is driving investment and innovation in cybersecurity.
It is. And those innovations will likely have a ripple effect beyond the financial sector.
Oh.
The new technologies and solutions that are being developed to meet DORA's requirements those are eventually going to find their way into other industries, strengthening cybersecurity and resilience across the board.
That's a good point. Going through the materials you sent me, one thing that really jumped out was the emphasis on information sharing and collaboration.
Yeah.
I mean, the financial sector has traditionally been pretty, guarded about sharing sensitive information,
Right.
especially with competitors.
Understandably so, yeah.
Yeah, but DORA's trying to change that.
It is. It is. It's encouraging these institutions to participate in information sharing arrangements, both within and across sectors.
Okay.
The idea is to kind of like break down those silos,
Right.
pool knowledge, and collectively raise the bar for the whole system's defenses.
Okay. So it's a move toward a more collaborative approach to cybersecurity.
Yeah, more community-based, if you will.
Okay. That makes sense in theory.
Yeah.
But I can imagine there's still some hesitation, sharing sensitive information with your rivals.
Oh, of course. It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
That's why DORA stresses the importance of trust and confidentiality within these arrangements. Participants need to feel confident that what they're sharing is going to be handled securely, used responsibly.
Yeah.
That requires clear rules of engagement, robust security protocols, maybe even legal frameworks to protect that sensitive data.
Right, so it's a bit of a balancing act.
It is, yeah.
You want transparency and collaboration, but you also need to maintain security.
Right. But if it's done right, information sharing can be a powerful tool.
Yeah.
It allows institutions to stay ahead of the curve, address emerging threats, create a more secure environment for everybody.
Okay, so let's talk about those competent authorities, the ones responsible for actually enforcing DORA.
Right, right.
What are they doing to make sure everybody is towing the line and complying with the regulation?
Well, they're definitely stepping up their game.
Okay.
We're seeing competent authorities across the EU issuing guidance documents, conducting workshops and training sessions, and even engaging in direct dialogue with institutions to help them understand and comply with the requirements.
Oh, okay, so it's not just about penalties.
No.
It's also about offering support.
Exactly. They recognize this is a major shift.
Yeah.
And they're trying to take a collaborative approach.
But they're not afraid to crack down when they need to.
Right. Of course not. They have a whole arsenal of tools at their disposal.
Right.
Warnings, remedial measures, those hefty administrative penalties.
Right.
They're taking a risk-based approach to supervision.
Okay.
So they're focusing their attention on the entities that pose the greatest risk to the system as a whole.
Yeah. Makes sense to focus your resources where they'll have the biggest impact.
Right. So a big systemically important bank with, let's say, a history of security incidents, they're likely to face a lot more scrutiny than, say, a small regional credit union with a good track record.
That makes sense. But beyond just fear of penalties, are there any incentives for institutions to really embrace DORA, like go above and beyond?
Yeah, I think some institutions might actually see this as a chance to differentiate themselves. Exceed those minimum requirements, establish themselves as leaders in digital operational resilience, and that can attract new customers, retain existing ones, potentially even command a premium for their services.
Right, so it's another way to turn compliance into a competitive advantage.
Exactly. And then you have the less tangible benefit of reputation.
Okay.
Institutions that are seen as being proactive, truly committed to security and resilience, that can build a lot of trust with customers, investors, even regulators.
Yeah.
And that can translate into a stronger brand,
Right.
greater market share, maybe even access to new business opportunities.
So it's not just about mitigating risks, it's about building a positive image, reaping those rewards.
Exactly. It's about showing that you're a responsible player.
Okay, now we can't forget about those auditors. We talked earlier about how DORA could have a pretty big impact on their world. Tell me more about that.
So as DORA becomes more embedded in the financial sector, we're likely to see auditors taking on a much bigger role.
Okay.
They'll be tasked with verifying compliance with DORA, assessing the effectiveness of those risk management frameworks,
Right.
even evaluating how prepared institutions are for emerging technologies and threats.
So it's an expanding role for auditors with a much bigger focus on technology.
Exactly. And this means they'll need to develop new skills and expertise,
Right.
invest in new tools and technologies,
Okay.
maybe even rethink their whole approach to auditing.
So we might even see specialized DORA auditors pop up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. People who really understand the intricacies of the regulation and those technical aspects of digital operational resilience.
Yeah, that would be a big shift.
It would be. It would be a whole new landscape for the profession.
Okay. So we've talked about the challenges, the opportunities, the regulatory landscape. But let's bring it back to the listener, the average person.
Yeah.
What does DORA actually mean for them?
Right.
How does it affect their daily lives?
That's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, DORA is about protecting you, the individual.
Okay.
It's about making sure that the financial system you rely on every day is resilient, secure, and trustworthy. When banks, payment systems, all these institutions are better prepared for disruptions.
Yeah.
It means your money is safer, your transactions are more reliable, your personal data is better protected.
So even though DORA is this massive, complex regulation aimed at institutions and providers, it's ultimately about protecting consumers and ensuring the stability of the system as a whole.
Exactly. It's about creating a more secure and resilient digital world for everyone.
Perfect. Well, on that note, I think it's time to move on to the final part of our DORA deep dive.
Sounds good.
We'll explore some of those long-term implications of this groundbreaking regulation and what it might mean for the future of the financial sector and beyond.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our DORA deep dive.
All right, let's do it.
And this time we're looking ahead to the long-term impacts of all of this.
Yeah, the long game.
Thinking about how DORA is shaping the future of the financial sector.
Absolutely. It's not just a quick fix.
Right.
It's really laying the groundwork for a future where digital resilience is just built in. Like it's part of the DNA of the financial sector.
Okay, so I'm picturing this financial world, and it's like a fortress, right? Nothing can touch it. No digital disruption can get through.
Well, it's not just about like building walls and defenses, you know.
Right.
One of the most profound impacts of DORA is this cultural shift it's driving.
Okay.
We're moving away from that reactive approach to cybersecurity.
Like waiting for something bad to happen.
Yeah, scrambling to patch things up after an attack.
Yeah.
And we're moving towards a much more proactive and preventative mindset.
So it's about building security and resilience into every process, every system, right from the start.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so how do you actually achieve that kind of shift? That seems like a big ask.
It is. It's a journey, not a sprint.
Okay.
Starts at the top.
Okay.
Leadership, the board, senior management. They need to make it absolutely clear that digital resilience is non-negotiable. It's a priority.
Correct.
Put their money where their mouth is, allocate resources, set clear accountability, and really foster an environment where people feel comfortable speaking up about risks and learning from mistakes.
So it's about making resilience part of the culture of the organization.
That's it, yeah. And that means ongoing training and awareness for every single employee.
Okay.
Everyone needs to understand why it matters,
Right.
what their role is, what to do if something goes wrong.
Yeah, because even something like a phishing email can bring down an entire institution if people aren't careful.
Exactly. One wrong click can have huge consequences.
So DORA's pushing for a more cyber-aware workforce.
Across the board, yeah.
Yeah.
And this isn't limited to financial institutions either. It's influencing those ICT third-party providers as well.
Okay.
They're becoming much more proactive about security, investing in robust systems, and even collaborating more closely with their clients.
So it's like DORA is raising the bar for everybody.
Exactly. And that's where the real opportunity for innovation comes in.
Okay, how so?
Well, as these institutions and providers are trying to meet these requirements,
Right.
they're creating this demand for new technologies and solutions.
Right.
We're talking about things like advanced threat detection, automated incident response, AI-powered security analytics,
Oh, wow.
even blockchain-based solutions for secure data storage and transfer.
So DORA is like this catalyst for innovation in cybersecurity.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And the benefits of those innovations will eventually go way beyond the financial sector.
Okay.
The new technologies that are developed to comply with DORA, those will eventually find their way into other industries,
Right.
making our whole digital world more secure.
Okay, that's a good point. You know, one thing that really struck me as we were talking about this is the sheer scale of DORA.
It's huge.
It's this massive undertaking, and we're really just at the beginning.
Absolutely. And as technology keeps evolving at this crazy pace, you know,
Yeah.
keeping up with digital resilience is only going to get harder.
Right.
DORA is a strong foundation, but it's not set in stone.
Okay.
It's going to need to be revisited, updated regularly.
So it's like an ongoing process.
Yeah, an ongoing game of cat and mouse.
Right. Trying to stay one step ahead of the threats.
Exactly. And this is where policymakers and regulators have a really critical role to play.
Okay.
They need to stay ahead of the curve, anticipate future challenges,
All right.
and make sure the DORA stays relevant and effective.
Okay. So it's a team effort.
It is. It's a collective responsibility to build this more secure digital future.
We can't forget about the global implications of all of this either, right?
Absolutely not. DORA is setting a precedent for how we regulate digital operational resilience, and other countries are watching.
Right.
We're already seeing similar regulations being talked about and implemented around the world.
So DORA's influence is going way beyond the EU.
It is. It is. And as this trend towards greater digital resilience continues,
Yeah.
it's going to raise some pretty profound questions about the future of the financial sector.
Like what? Give me an example.
Think about it.
Okay.
As financial institutions become more and more reliant on technology,
Yeah.
and as those systems become more interconnected, more complex, it raises concerns about systemic risk.
Right.
What happens if a major cloud provider has a global outage?
Right.
Or a critical software vulnerability is exploited on a massive scale?
Yeah.
The consequences could be catastrophic.
So we're talking about potentially huge risks here.
We are.
Yeah.
And DORA is forcing us to confront those risks.
Right.
And think differently about how we manage them.
So it's not just a matter of if these events happen.
It's when.
It's when.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything else about DORA's long-term impact that our listeners should be thinking about?
I think the last point that's really crucial is this. DORA is not just about technology.
Okay.
It's about people.
Okay.
It's about fostering a culture of responsibility, awareness, collaboration. It's about empowering people to make smart decisions to protect themselves.
So even though DORA is focused on institutions and providers, it really affects all of us.
It does. It does. Digital resilience is no longer actional.
Right. It's essential.
It's essential. DORA is a huge step in the right direction.
Okay.
And it's a conversation we all need to be a part of.
Well said. Well, I think that about wraps up our DORA's deep dive.
It was a good one.
It was a big one.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
Yeah, but we covered a lot of ground.
We did.
From the core principles of the regulation to the challenges of putting it into practice, the exciting opportunities, the long-term implications. The future. It's complex, it's always changing, but one thing is clear. DORA is a game changer.
Absolutely.
It's setting a new standard, and we'll be feeling its impact for years to come.
I agree.
Thanks for joining us, and keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.
Well said.